Considering everything that happened in 2020 and 2021, I don't really have a funny intro for this video. Stay healthy, everybody. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below. It'll give you a pretty good idea of what the Horror Movie Syllabus is all about, but in short, we're going to look at a particular subgenre of horror and then pick 3 movies from that subgenre to explore. Today's subgenre is disease movies, horror movies about disease. And I think that this is a really interesting subgenre, especially now, given the pandemic that we have gone through and are kind of still in. There is a lot to be said for the horror of disease. These movies, I think, by and large, hit better now than they would have a few years ago. I think that we can relate to these movies a little bit more. They're a little scarier because they feel a little bit closer to home than they maybe once did. But that doesn't mean that a disease movie isn't still fun. See, they still have their roots in gore, in body horror, in, the stuff that, the horror hounds, the gore hounds tend to really like. And that includes me. I tend to like these movies because they can be really gory, really sick, and a lot of fun. But the pathos and the drama behind them is something that I think I feel more now than I used to feel. And when I was revisiting these movies, it was pretty interesting to see my reaction to them in light of a post-pandemic world. So it's an interesting thing to think about because these movies are by and large a little bit more grounded in reality than your typical body horror movie. A lot of these movies kind of parallel zombie movies, not just in terms of like infections that maybe turn people into something grotesque or monstrous, but also in terms of like the effect on society and like post-apocalyptic kind of feel and things like that. And we'll see some of that in the movies that we're going to talk about today. There is a lot of parallel. There is a lot of things to compare with, say, a zombie movie and a body horror movie, something like that. But again, they tend to treat the subject matter a little bit more seriously than your average zombie movie. And I think that that's an important part of the disease horror movie, that reality aspect of it, that idea that there's not really something you can fight or punch. With a zombie movie, even though that, the epidemic of the zombie is kind of something you can't exactly fight, you can fight off the zombie horde. In most disease movies, what you're talking about is something that's attacking you from the inside, and there's not really a way to fight it. Your best bet is to try to avoid it, maybe seeking a cure or something like that. And that's a lot of what these movies tend to focus on, tend to zero in on to their benefit. I think that that's part of what makes these disease movies so scary, is that there isn't a way to fight it off. There isn't a villain necessarily to focus on. And I think that's distressing and disturbing. And again, post-pandemic, I think that really kind of hits home a little bit, where, it doesn't matter, if you can find somebody to blame or something like that. At the end of the day, you have to just take the precautions you take to stay healthy. And in a horror movie, usually that doesn't really work out so well. And we're going to see a lot of that in the movies that we're looking at today. This subgenre does have a lot of movies that I tend to like. And as I've kind of alluded to already, there's a lot of crossover. A lot of these kinds of movies, these disease movies, can fit into other subgenres as well, including zombies, including body horror. There are splatter. There are other subgenres you can put these movies into. And there's other movies from those subgenres that can be put into this subgenre too. It's another one of these ones that has some flexibility to it. But what I've tried to focus on today are movies that really do zero in mostly on the effects of the disease on either the people specifically or the community at large. And I think that'll become more evident, more clear as we go on in the video. I think it'll be pretty apparent to you. As usual, we're going to organize the movies into undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate level. And in this case, they're going to go in order of how disturbing they are, how grotesque they are. They're going to get more and more gruesome as they go on because just like a debilitating disease, our list is just going to get worse and worse and gross and more grosser and grosser. So that'll be a lot of fun. So with that, let's go ahead and see if we can find the cure to what ails us when it comes to disease horror movies. The first disease movie that we're looking at today, the undergraduate level selection, is The Crazies. The Crazies came out in 1973 and is directed by George A. Romero. And it's not one of his uh, Living Dead movies, but it does have a lot of similarities to that, and winds up being, his the standard George Romero commentary on social commentary on various things. In this case, government and the war. And it's also got a 2010 remake that is honestly really good, maybe just as good as the original. But we're going to get into all of that as we explore this movie. But first, if you haven't seen it before, the movie is the story of a small town that winds up getting an outbreak of an infectious disease triggered by contamination of the water by a military institution of a biological weapon. So that biological weapon becomes loose in the town, and what it does is it either kills people or makes them go mad, go crazy and violent and homicidal. And so the government goes into the town trying to put a stop to the spread of the contagion, and a group of people are trying to escape so that they aren't, basically murdered by the military. And hijinks abound as they tend to do. But we won't go into it too much so as not to spoil the movie for you. But The Crazies is an interesting movie because it's I guess I'd call it a bit of a cult classic, maybe more because it's a Romero film than anything else. But it's not really, a bona fide classic. It's not like the Living Dead series. It's not that level of revered. Or even that level of famous, to be honest with you, but it does have its fans, and for good reason. Like I said, it's got the standard George Romero tropes, if you will, about commentary on the society, and in this case in particular, the relationship between the government and the people. And I gather this was, kind of a commentary on the Vietnam War at the time and the severe distrust of the government, and the fears over government power and what they're doing, and the techniques, the war techniques that they're using. All of this is very, very clear, very, very apparent in the movie. Not that Romero is really known for being super subtle with his social commentary, but The Crazies is an example of him being virtually ham-fisted in it. But it's okay because it works. And one of the reasons why it works is because it's not just a look, military is bad kind of movie. He actually makes the military and the military leaders major characters in the film. And you see a lot of the story from their perspective. And that's an interesting thing because you see them, being almost as in the dark as the townspeople about what's going on, and B, conflicted at least about what they are doing, if not downright unhappy about what they are doing, but understanding that they have orders or that they're doing something for the greater good. It really kind of tries to paint the actions of the military with a slightly more nuanced portrayal than I would have expected to have seen. The movie is not without its flaws. It does have, it's a product of its time, right? It doesn't age beautifully well. Some of the effects are not fantastic. The gore is a little lighter than you would expect, especially if you've seen the Living Dead series. And some of the acting is. We'll call it theatrical, but none of this is enough of a detriment to lessen the impact of the film. It's still a very good film, very interesting with something to say, and again, while it may be slightly beating you over the head with it, it's a message that doesn't really, it's not going to really ruin the experience for you. I think, it's something that you're going to roll with pretty fine, regardless of what your politics are. I think you're going to be able to get into the movie just fine. And there's still enough horrific elements. There's still enough tragedy in the movie to really engage you and connect with you and make it a worthwhile viewing experience. Now, I mentioned there's a 2010 remake, and it's a glossier, newer, modern remake, and it comes out at the time when like the zombie craze in horror movies is really prevalent. It's really big. And again, while The Crazies isn't exactly a zombie movie, it has a lot of the same zombie tropes. You know, the crazed people kind of act like zombies, and they they have the same effect on society kind of thing, post-apocalyptic thing. All of that's kind of running along the zombie thing. So I can see why this movie would be released at that time. And the 2010 remake actually did a couple things that I think help it quite a bit. One is they really make the effects of the virus look gruesome. You know, the crazies didn't really do that so much. The people just kind of look like they're acting crazy. And in the sequel, or rather the remake, they definitely made them look like they were affected physically, and I think that's much more effective. The other major thing that it did was it focused on a small group of people, the people trying to escape, and really didn't pay as much attention to the military, which made it a little bit more of your typical horror film with your typical scares, but it made it very effective. It's a scarier movie than the original one. It has better gore, better effects, better performances. It's a better made movie, honestly. It has better budget, all that stuff. So it works really, really well, but it's a little bit more standard in that sense. So in comparing the two, the original and the remake, which one's better? Irrelevant. I say you watch them both because they're both complementing each other in a way. You know, you've got the small, focused, typical horror story of people trying to survive an outbreak, and at a military that's kind of killing them for reasons they can't understand, and then you've got the original that's giving you more of that understanding of where the military is coming from and what's going on. Putting them together gives you a pretty well-rounded view of the story in a way that I think works really, really well. Like stylistically, these two movies don't go along very well, but story-wise, they complement each other nicely. So I would definitely recommend watching both of them. You might even start with the remake first because, like I said, it's a little bit more of your stereotypical standard horror fare in a good way. It's a good movie. I really like the remake. Like I said, I think it stands up to the original, and I think if you watch that one first and then go to the original, where you get a little bit more of a quote unquote nuanced view of the government, and I use that very loosely. I think that just enhances the story a little bit more and gives you more background. So I definitely think checking out both of them is a good thing. But as far as terms of exploring disease, this is one. It's a man-made disease that affects a small town by accident, and it really does hammer home how easily a disease can get out of hand and how we really don't have good ways to combat it. So it's a really great entry into the disease subgenre. So if you're looking for something to scratch that itch, don't scratch too hard because you might be scratching your skin off. More on that in a little bit, but I definitely say give both versions of the Crazies a try. The next disease movie we're going to look at today, the graduate level selection, is Cabin Fever. Cabin Fever came out in 2002 and is the directorial debut of Eli Roth, who is a somewhat divisive figure in horror, I feel. But it is an interesting debut and is a very gory movie and has its fans and has its detractors, but we will dig into that, of course, as we look at the movie a little bit closer. But if you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a group of college kids who go off to a cabin in the woods, and it seems like it's a setup for a slasher, but it's not, because instead of being, hunted and stalked by a killer, these kids wind up contracting a flesh-eating virus that starts to take them out one by one, and their reactions to this contagion are not ideal, to say the least. And to say anything more than that would be spoiling, which of course I don't want to do because the hijinks abound in this movie. But the movie is gross, and that is probably the best thing about it. And I say that like it's like I mean that to be pejorative, and I don't, because I like this movie. I actually like it quite a bit. It's ridiculous in a lot of good ways, but your mileage might vary on this. See, again, it's Eli Roth, and Eli Roth is a character. He is a good director. I've liked his movies. By and large, I've liked his movies. We talked about him recently when we talked about the Hostel movies. He's not afraid to go really gory, really bleak, really dark, and like sardonically, bleakly funny at the same time. And that works for me, or at least it tends to. Now, again, I said he's a polarizing figure. I think a lot of people don't like Eli Roth because Eli Roth really likes Eli Roth. He kind of seems like a bit of an arrogant guy, a little bit of a dude bro, a little bit of a jerk, and I get that, and I can see why that would rub people the wrong way and maybe not like him. I don't think I'd really want to hang out with Eli Roth, but I do enjoy a lot of his movies, not all of them, but I do enjoy a lot of movies, and I enjoyed this one, and I think I enjoyed it because of how gory it is. It's ridiculously gory. This movie has some wonderfully famous scenes that will stick with you in terms of just horrific gore that's done practically and looks absolutely fantastic. It's held up remarkably well 20 years later. It still looks really, really good. I think that the gore is the calling card for this movie, and it kind of became the calling card for Roth because his subsequent movies would really revel in this gore. And again, if you're not into gore, if you're not a gore hound, Roth's probably not going to be for you. He hasn't really shown much maturity to do something other than this, if I'm being frank and honest about it. But when he's doing this, he does it well. Like I said, he goes practical, he goes gory, he doesn't pull punches on it, and he does it in a way that tends to lend itself to some gross humor. Like, there's the famous shaving scene, the leg shaving scene in the movie that is cringing, just awful. But it's also kind of like just wickedly, like just grossly funny, and especially when you start thinking about like why is this person shaving her legs? There's just so many gruesome scenes in this that are just over the top, and I think that's what works for me because the story itself is a little thin, right? It's basically kids go out into the woods, they contract a flesh-feeding virus, and then they act stupid. And I don't get too bothered when characters act stupid in horror movies because that's kind of a trope that I don't really get bothered by. But the stupid is high in this movie, and I think that might be why this movie itself is a little polarizing. It's got its fans, people who love it, and there are people who really don't care for this movie very much. And it's because I think because the characters aren't super likable. They do a lot of stupid things. It's really hard to root for anybody in this movie. And I find that to be okay because I like slasher movies where it's kind of hard to root for most of the people there too. And they wind up dying, so it's kind of okay. And that's kind of the case here too. At least that's the way I feel about it. But there are some ridiculously stupid people doing some ridiculously stupid things in this movie. But I'm kind of here for it. I enjoy it. I think that the cast is not the most likable characters, but I do like some of the actors. And there's Serena Vincent in particular, who is, by the way, very lovely in person. I got to meet her at a convention. She's really, really nice. And she's good in this movie. Like all of the people in this movie actually are selling me on their characters. Their characters are just kind of shallow and a little one note, but it works for me. And so ultimately I find this movie to be fun. The movie itself is not taking itself too seriously. It's got a lot of homages to other movies, and I think doing it rather well. And it knows what it is. It's not trying to be more than what it is. It's not trying to be deeper than what it is. It's trying to have a good time and gross you out. And on that level, I think it succeeds wonderfully. What doesn't succeed so well are the sequels. The sequels are not good. And noteworthy, the second one, Cabin Fever 2, is directed by Ty West, and you know how much I love me some Ty West. But it bothers me that this movie is him because it's not good. And I found out that in the research for this video, he actually felt like the movie had been taken away from him, and they did reshoots without him, and they edited it without him. So he wanted his name taken off of it, but they did not grant his wish. So his name is stuck on there, but he does not feel like it's his movie, and that makes me feel so much better because it just doesn't feel like a Ty West movie. It doesn't have his quality at all. None of them are good. In particular, the remake of the original, which uses the same shooting script that Roth used for his original, it feels like a complete waste of time. It's very pointless. It's literally the exact same movie, but without any of the gross out flair that Roth has. Like, think what you about Roth. He's a solid director, and the remake will show you. If you watch the original and the remake, you'll see how much his direction matters. So I'd skip the rest of them, but the original one is definitely interesting, if nothing else. One of the things I found out about it is that apparently David Lynch was one of the executive producers. Roth used to work for David Lynch, which in and of itself blows my mind. And Angelo Badalamenti did some of the music for Cabin Fever, and this all blows my mind because I didn't know any of this. And it's making me need to go and revisit Cabin Fever and really pay attention to things like the music. And I don't know actually if David Lynch really did wind up being executive producer because he's not credited, but apparently early on he was going to be the executive producer of the movie. So he saw something in Roth or the movie that he found interesting, which when you see the movie, it's very incongruous. It doesn't feel like David Lynch in the slightest. I mean, it's weird and goofy, but it doesn't have a Lynchian feel at all. but I do like the movie. I think it's interesting. I think it's fun. I think it's gross. The kind of movie, if you have friends that like gross stuff, this is a good one to hang out and watch. It may be less fun by yourself, but I do think it's a party movie. I think it's a good time movie. It's wildly gross, inappropriate, disgusting. And I know a lot of people have hangups with all of those things, and in particular with Roth doing those things. But I'm cool with it. I just enjoy the movie, but it's not for everybody. So if you've seen it, let us know what you think. But if you haven't seen it, consider whether or not you want to watch it before you check it out because it's not for everybody. And the last movie that we're looking at today, the postgraduate level selection, is Contracted. Contracted came out in 2013 and is a far more controversial movie than I'd realized before doing the research for this video, but it is also disturbingly, deeply grotesque and upsetting with the amount of body horror and gore that is on the screen. This one will make your stomach turn for sure, and it's not to be taken lightly. If you're unfamiliar with it, if you haven't seen it, the movie is about this woman who goes to a party. She's dealing with a breakup with her ex and gets sexually assaulted during the party, and then wakes up in the morning not doing so well. She's, having some vaginal bleeding. She's got some weird skin irritations, and she starts to degrade more and more and more as time goes on, to an alarming degree. And her reaction to this degradation of her body, this breakdown of her body, is unexpected to say the least. And the hijinks abound as they always do, but we won't go into it too deeper than that because it would definitely be spoiling the movie for you. And spoiling the movie is an interesting thing here because what we're talking about really is spoiling some shocking stuff. And we might actually wind up doing a little bit of that, to be honest with you, because there is a lot of shocking stuff here. And I feel like that is once again kind of one of the strengths of the movie, at least for me. I do love me some good gore movies. I like good practical effects, and Contracted is really, really nailing a lot of that. That said, where it maybe is a little bit shaky is on the storyline, and not unlike Cabin Fever, maybe the gore kind of saves you from really focusing too much on a storyline that maybe doesn't make a lot of sense if you spend too much time, thinking about it. Frankly, it's an interesting take on a zombie movie, if I'm being honest with you. But unlike most zombie movies, this is really focusing at the beginning of like a zombie outbreak and really, really, really focuses on it more as a disease than on the actual zombie itself. I'll explain more as we go on, but I really feel like this needed to go more in disease than into a zombie movie for that reason. It really focuses on the breakdown of the body, and it's got this kind of admittedly a little heavy-handed idea of like a sexually transmitted disease. There's an allegory there for an STD that is very prevalent, and at some points the movie's just beating you over the head with it. It's not the most subtle of movies, to say the least, but it really is a cool idea. This idea of a sexually transmitted disease that is so intense, so bad that you will just literally fall apart. And that's what happens to our heroine. The lead character is played by Najara Townsend. I'm not really familiar with her, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She gives a really impressive performance. Not the most likable performance, and I've seen a lot of people who didn't care for her in the movie, and I think it's because she plays somebody who's not super likable, but I think she really commits to the role. And when I say she's not super likable, I mean that she does a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense. And this is a movie where you're gonna have to suspend your disbelief quite a bit. We talked about Cabin Fever and how people did stupid things. People do stupid things in this movie too, but you really have to strain your credulity to believe the way that people react. In particular, the lead character falling apart and not going to get medical attention earlier and more frequently. It's really hard to believe. Other people around her just not reacting the way you think you'd react if you saw somebody who looks like she looks at that point is really hard to swallow. And you just kind of have to roll with it because the movie has to happen. That's basically the reason why, right? The movie has to happen. So people are just going to like let these things slide. But people are going to do things in this movie that you just think would never in a million years actually happen. And you're not wrong. I can sit here and try to justify some of it. I'm a bit of a hospital phobe myself, so I'm very reluctant to go to a doctor. So I might really push things off a little bit. But I'm sorry, like when maggots start falling out of you, you go to the doctor. when you're vomiting blood, when your eyes are going bloody, like you go to the doctor, your fingernails are falling off, you go to the doctor, and she doesn't. And again, it's not just her. Everybody in the movie kind of acts in a way that's a little bit surreal, which gives the movie a slight surreal feeling, and it doesn't feel quite as realistic, but the gore is so realistic looking that it still hits, at least for me. I get a lot of vibes of Starry Eyes from this movie. Now, Starry Eyes, I think, has a better story. It's a tighter narrative and a more likable lead character, probably. But that same really grotesque, shocking deterioration of the body, that breakdown of self, of physical self, is very similar. Some of the scenes actually look very similar, and I say that it's a good thing because I love Starry Eyes. I think it's fantastic, and I think Contracted does that breakdown just as well. It really is shocking, and it's the reason why I made the syllabus. Is it's such a shocking and disturbing meltdown of a human body in a slow, painful manner, and watching somebody's reaction to it, and then, like I said, the reactions maybe aren't very realistic, but man, they go to some shockingly dark places with those reactions, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Like I said, I can't say it's the best movie in terms of narrative, in terms of making sense, in terms of logic, but it sure is fun. Again, if you like gore, if you don't like gore, this is not the one for you. This has got some uncomfortable stuff. Now, I mentioned it's got some controversy about it too. Now, if you saw on the video, it says right here, it says not your average one night stand, and that is a part of controversy because it portrayed the marketing portrayed the sex act that happens in the movie that gives her where she contracts the disease as a one night stand, and instead it's clearly sexual assault. It's very clear in the movie, and so they got a lot of criticism. The filmmakers got a lot of criticism. The studio got a lot of criticism for the branding or the marketing of the incident in that way. Not great. And then there's also some controversy over some of the portrayals. The woman, the lead character, is a self-identified lesbian in the movie, and some of the portrayals of like the portrayal of her ex-girlfriend is maybe a little stereotypical, and it is written by a man. So there's a lot to unpack there. None of that was stuff that really got to me. I didn't really know a lot of that when I'd seen the movie. And knowing it now and rewatching the movie, it doesn't really hinder it for me because, again, I don't take the movie tremendously seriously. I just think it's a gory good time. It really is gruesome. It's got the gruesome up to 11. So I had a lot of fun with that. But I mention it here because your mileage may vary. These might be things that are deal breakers for you or just things that really detract from your enjoyment of the movie. So I'm putting it on the table for you. Now, the movie apparently was popular enough to get a sequel, and the sequel focuses on another character from the movie and his breakdown, his physical breakdown, while he also investigates the origins of this outbreak and the person who was, trying to spread it around. And it's a little bit more focused on kind of more of like a zombie origins type movie. Far less interesting to me. Far less interesting. The STD analogy and the focus on this one woman breaking down and her own personal dramas was way more compelling to me than this standard trope zombie sequel. It didn't really work for me, so I'm not really recommending that one. And I'm only recommending the first one if you really like gore and you really like sick stuff. If not, this is not going to be for you. There's too many other things wrong with it to really recommend it. But I've kind of given you my thoughts on it. You have an idea of where I come on this one. But if you've seen it, let us know what you think because there are some divergent opinions from mine for sure. If you've got a divergent opinion, share it in the comments for everybody to check out. But if you haven't seen this one, proceed at your own risk. And if you do, let us know what you think. So that's going to do it for our examination of disease horror movies. But if you like these movies like I do, there's a few extra credit movies for us to explore. So let's check out those. The first one I'm going to mention is a movie called The Bay. And The Bay came out in 2012 and is a mockumentary slash found footage horror movie directed by Barry Levinson, who is an Academy Award nominated director, and starring Heather Donahue, who is a favorite of mine. And it really is a well made, very compelling narrative that only pales in comparison to better mockumentaries, but I'll explain as I go on. If you haven't seen it before, the movie follows a small town that's celebrating 4th of July and they're going to have fireworks, but there is a contamination in the water. And the contamination starts to spread like wildfire in the town, and it's being covered by a news crew, a young anchor woman who's trying to, cover the fluffy town picnic events, and then it winds up being in the middle of this, horrific storyline where people are just dying in the streets and basically suffering from this disease that seems to be eating people from the inside out. And I won't go into it too much more than that so as to not spoil it for you, but it is a fascinating narrative because of how realistically it's portrayed and how realistically it's set up. The movie is clearly an environmental message. It's, again, one of these movies that it's not really shy about its message, but I wouldn't say it's full on beating you over the head with it, but it's clearly got an environmental message to it, one that resonates for me at least pretty well, and one that feels very realistic. They explain how this virus, this disease winds up spreading, and I'm using the word virus, but we won't get into it too much, not spoil things, but that is a questionable word to use, but it is a disease, and the origins of it make sense. When they explain how this is happening, why it's happening, it makes a lot of sense. I'm no scientist, but the science seems sound in this movie. And I think that the mockumentary aspect of it does lend itself to the verisimilitude. It does add this element of realism to it that works really well. And it's weird to see Barron Levinson, Academy Award nominated director of Rain Man, amongst many other great movies, Diner, and also responsible for one of my favorite TV shows, Homicide: Life on the Street. But Barry Levinson, great director. And seeing him do a found footage movie is strange, but he does it really, really well. And Heather Donahue as the lead woman, the anchor woman who's kind of mostly your lead going through the movie is absolutely fantastic. Now I'm biased because I love Heather Donahue. She was on a TV show I love called You're the Worst. She was in Pitch Perfect. Some people aren't going to love her voice. Her voice is unique, but I find her to be absolutely a blast, and I thought she was great in the role. Everybody in the movie is actually great. Everybody's very believable. It comes off very, very real, very, very realistic. The only hesitation I have about this movie, and the only reason why it didn't really make the syllabus proper, was because there are better mockumentaries out there. I really wanted to get the Bay on here, but it just kept getting beat out. Is it as good as like Lake Mungo or Savage Land? Not quite, but it's close. But it's close. I think it's really close to being on the same level as those two. Those movies, kind of the gold standard of mockumentary in my mind. This one doesn't quite reach that level, and partly because some of the camera work is suspect. Uh, the idea that this small town has cameras on the cop cars that both shoot outside and inside seems unlikely to me. Some of the camera stuff, some of the scenes just doesn't make sense to somebody be filming, which is always the problem with found footage and mockumentary. But these are nitpicks because the movie had me engaged from the start. It's a really compelling movie with a really compelling idea, with a really bleak and depressing, kind of turnout for it, which is kind of par for the course for these movies. I didn't really dig into this too much at the beginning of the video, but these movies tend to be pretty bleak, and there's not a lot of happy endings. And most of the movies we're talking about, not such happy endings. And the Bay is one of them. But it's a really good movie, underrated movie that didn't get enough love. Frankly, I don't know why. It's got a lot of good critical acclaim, but really just didn't find an audience. And I really wish I would change. So if you haven't seen it, check it out and let me know what you think. The next extra credit movie I'm going to mention is a movie called Carriers. Carriers came out in 2009 and has a really good cast, including Chris Pine and Piper Perabo and Emily Van Camp. Really good actors, and it's a really well-made movie that just never seemed to find an audience. It got really good reviews, but never really seemed to find an audience, even though Chris Pine kind of became famous really quickly after that. But if you haven't seen it before, the movie follows four people that are, surviving a post-apocalyptic world where the pandemic has already ravaged everything, and they've got their stolen car, and they're just trying to find a place to hole up and survive and try to ride out the aftermath of this massive pandemic that has killed off so many people. And as they try to do this, of course, they keep running afoul of problems and other people. And, it's got a lot of, man is the worst monster kind of aspect to it. But I won't get into it too much more than that because I don't want to spoil it for you. But Carriers is an underrated gem. It's a really good movie that is bolstered by the fact that it's got really good actors in it. Across the board, every single person in this movie is bringing an A-game performance, and they're doing a really good job of it. It's a simple movie that really has a very good like Walking Dead feel to it. People trying to find a place, a home, if you will, to hole up and survive. And of course, other people trying to take it over and whatnot, or just kind of try to rob from them, really kind of being where the drama comes in. In fact, the disease itself is looms over the whole movie as a specter, but we don't see a tremendous amount of the disease affecting people, so much as we see people affecting people, and that's where the strength of this movie lies. It's really, again, very very bleak, very very dark, but really compelling to see the disappointing way that people will react in these kinds of situations. And again, post pandemic, we've seen some of this, not to this degree, but we've seen the selfishness that people can have, the cutthroat aspects of it. And so this movie hits a lot better now than it would have, 15 years ago or 13 years ago when it came out. It definitely is more effective now. And it seems like it's found a little bit of an audience, but it really has gone under the radar. And it deserves more attention than that because it's a well-made movie. It's a low-budget movie, but it's a well-made movie. It's compelling. The performances really carry it along, and it's got just some heartbreaking stuff in it. It is, and maybe that's part of it also. Is like, people don't go raving about this with their friends about how fun it is to watch. It's no cabin fever because it's depressing. It's a downer of a movie. There's a lot of bleak stuff, a lot of sad stuff happening in this movie. So it's not necessarily the most enjoyable ride, but it is a very well made movie that really hit, for me at least. It hit pretty hard. I really was impressed with this movie. The performances are great. Chris Pine, he's kind of the jerk in the movie, and it's not that hard for him to pull that one off, I guess. But Piper Parabel, who's somebody I don't actually like very much, is great in the movie. Emily Van Camp, Lupusi, they're all good in this movie, and it really is what kept me engaged in this movie. Otherwise, with lesser actors or lesser performances, this movie would have fallen flat. But it doesn't. It really hit home for me, and I'm curious if any of you have seen it and what your thoughts are on it, because it doesn't seem like people talk about this movie very much, and that's kind of a shame because I think it deserves a little bit of a spotlight. And if you are into disease movies, this is definitely one to check out. The gore is a little lighter. It's not gore free, but the gore is a little lighter than in a lot of the other movies we've talked about today. So if you are wanting to test out some of these disease movies, but you don't want to get too grossed out, Carries is a good place to start. But if you do check it out, please let us know what you think, because I'm really curious to see what people think of this movie. And the last extra credit movie we're looking at today is a movie called It Comes at Night. It Comes at Night came out in 2017, so it's a relatively recent movie, but it's still pre-pandemic. And it is probably the worst case of mismarketing and mistitling that I've seen in a long time for a movie. And it's a disappointing thing because I think it hurt the movie's box office. I think it hurt the movie's reputation a bit. And it's a shame because the movie is actually excellent. It's a very, very good movie that deserves better than it got. If you haven't seen it before, the movie is about a family that's holed up in, again, a post-apocalyptic world that's been ravaged by a disease, and they come across a guy who's trying to break into their house. Turns out he thought the house was empty, and he's just trying to find a way to rescue his own family. So they decide to invite his family in, but there's a sense of dread and mistrust that permeates the entire movie and is affecting this relationship, where nobody really trusts anybody. Everybody's paranoid and afraid of what's going to happen. Everybody's afraid of disease and just really not able to connect or trust or live normally in any way, shape, or form. And it's very, very powerful. But I don't want to spoil it too much because I don't want to get into the details. And I just want to focus on the fact that this movie was marketed as a horror movie that is going to be full of some sort of monsters or gore or jump scares or tension and thrills, and it doesn't really do that. That is not what it's about. It reminded me a lot of M. Night Shyamalan's The Village in terms of the marketing, where what was sold is not at all what was on the screen. This movie is much more of a drama. It's much more introspective. It much more is looking at the human condition. It really doesn't have monsters in it. It doesn't have a whole lot of jump scares or things like that. The real fear comes from the paranoia and the sense of distrust. In fact, this movie could have easily gone in a paranoia subgenre, but I decided to put it here. Even though this movie, out of all the movies we've talked about, focuses the least on the actual disease, you're given very little insight into how the disease works, what the disease is, what the impacts of it are. You see it a little bit, but it's very fleeting. It's very little. It just uses the disease as this specter in the background. And really what it focuses on is, again, that whole man is the real monster thing, which, again, I probably should have hit harder at the beginning of this movie because or the beginning of this video, because it's really a theme that runs through a lot of these movies. Man is the worst monster, which again, not the most original themes, but it really resonates well in these disease movies, and especially in this one. Again, the title "It Comes at Night" implies that some monster or something is coming at night, or something like that. That is not at all what this movie is about. And I feel like if you know that going in, you are much more likely to have a good time watching this movie. And when I say good time, I mean appreciate it for what it is. It's not a fun movie. Again, bleak, dour, kind of slow, but in a good way. Depressing. It's a sad movie. Bleak is the word that kept in mind when I was watching this movie, and it's really well done. Again, we've got across the board really good performances, especially Joel Edgerton, who is an underrated actor. And we talked about him before? I'm not sure, but we'll definitely be talking about him again. He is leading this cast, but every single person in here, Riley Keough, we have talked about Riley Keough before. She's fantastic. Everybody is great in this movie, and then once again, you need these performances to feel authentic and believable, and you need to connect with these people in order to get into the movie and feel the pathos that it wants you to feel. And I think it does it wonderfully. The movie deserved better. I think people going in expecting it to be a thrilling scare fest with jump scares and a monster came out disappointed, and as a result, the movie didn't really get the buzz that it should have gotten. This is a movie that was mismarketed, and it's unfortunate. But if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's just a really nice dissertation on how people would react in this kind of post-apocalyptic world, this post-pandemic world, and what people will do for their families, and how paranoia and distrust can just eat away at you, and just the tragedy of losing family. All of this hits for me. If it hits for you, if it's the kind of thing you like, check this movie out and then let me know what you think. So that's going to do it for our exploration into disease horror movies. Like I said, these movies are great for me because they focus on gore a lot of the time, which is a lot of fun. And they also do have that man is the worst monster, that kind of, people turning on each other aspect to it, which I find to be a compelling narrative most of the time. And, like I said, it dovetails a lot with like the zombie motif where man is the biggest monster kind of thing. But I do think that if disease, it works rather well because there isn't an antagonist to fight off in a disease movie because the disease is inside of you, and so seeing people turn on each other just narratively makes sense for me. It kind of works really, really well. These movies tend to be, I don't know if fun is the right word for me, but I do enjoy them quite a bit. So, and I liked all the movies we talked about today. So if you like them too, check all of these out. But for now, it's time to dig into a horror trivia pursuit question. This is that time of the video where I like to read a question live on camera and try to answer it. And this time we're going to look at the gore, so the category on the card, because it's gore, gory disease. So here's our question today. In 2005's The Devil's Rejects, what is the name of the motel to which Otis and Baby first escape? This hurts a little bit because I know that we recently did this movie, and I had to edit clips for it, and I edited a clip where they were at this hotel, this motel, and there's a sign in the video, and I can't remember the name of it at all. And I cannot. I mean, it's not there at all. I feel like it's like Casa de Sol or something like that, but I don't know. I'm just flat out making that out. I usually don't guess my answer so early, but it's a pure guess. Like I have no idea what the answer is to this question, and I'm kind of mad at myself because when I was editing, I looked at this multiple times, and that's not a piece of information that I absorbed. And I usually make the excuse that I'm not good with names in the movies stuff like that, and that's not really the thing here. The thing here is just this is something I looked at multiple times and for whatever reason just paid no attention to it, which makes me think that maybe it's got a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek name or something like that, or maybe it's a reference to some other horror movie or something like that. It's Rob Zombie, so I can see him paying homage to something like that, but I don't remember. It's not there. I do remember the scene, where they have the family trapped in the hotel room, and then when the maid goes in there and finds all the aftermath of their visit and goes running out. It's a great scene. That's the clip that I put into the video. But I do not remember the name of the motel, the hotel at all. It's not there. So I'm saying Casa del Sol. I don't know that that's accurate. In fact, it's just a shot in the dark. I don't know why that's there. And I wonder if when we look at the answer, if I'll be surprised. But I don't think I will. I don't. I just think it's not there. It's just not there. So I've prattled on long enough. I hope you guys got your answer or making your guess at this point. Let's go ahead and see what the real answer is. And the answer is Kahiki Palms. Kahiki Palms. I was going to spell it for you, but I've got it on the screen right now, I'm sure. Kahiki Palms. No idea. None. That doesn't, like, there's no recognition. There's no, oh, none of it. None of it at all. So I'm not even close on that one. And, I don't even feel that bad about it, to be honest with you. I don't. I like Devil's Rejects. It's probably my favorite of those Rob Zombie, Firefly family movies. But, it is what it is. It's not a movie I revisit a lot. It's a hard movie to revisit, frankly, for me, and probably for a lot of people. But so I don't feel too bad about that one. But did you get it right? Let us know in the comments below if you got it right, and if you got it wrong, what did you guess? Hopefully you had some funny answers for us. But that's gonna do it for this week's video. I hope you had a good time. I hope you stay healthy and disease-free. And we'll talk to you guys next week. But until then, class dismissed.